There are two types of evil people in this world. People who do evil things, and then people who see evil things being done and do nothing to stop it.
For the wrong to rule, the good must just stand idly by.
Hello and welcome to this week's... Kicked my guest. Laurence Fox Show. The very brave Dutch lawyer and political commentator Eva Vlaardingerbroek. Did I get it right?
You got it right.
Got it right. Okay, most importantly, Mean Girls.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's so great about Mean Girls?
Okay, so we were just having lunch. I didn't expect to be on camera right now, but I spilled a secret to you that I've never told anyone, and I'm surprised no one has ever noticed. Because I use a quote from Mean Girls all the time in like any type of political speech that I do. So, and it goes, I can quote it like precisely. It's Jenna somewhere in the movie. She says, "There are two types of evil people in this world. People who do evil things, and then people who see evil things being done and do nothing to stop it."
And that has shaped your political and moral philosophy.
Absolutely. I thought as a 15-year-old that was the most profound thing that I've ever heard in my life, and I still think it sounds like a biblical truth.
Yeah. So, without wishing to sort of overcompliment you, you're quite young, and I always associate young people with being quite woke, and you're not. Why not?
I am not, because I think I wasn't naturally, so to say, when I went into university, and I pretty much immediately noticed what happens if you're not.
Like
So-
in what? So you studied law at university.
I went to law school, and basically within the first 2 weeks of being in law school, voicing my opinion that I thought was pretty much a normal opinion to have. You know, I didn't really think all that much about it. I noticed that my fellow students, but also my professors, would come after me, and it all went downhill when a teacher told me that I should take what was it called again, a confirmation bias test, you know, to just see how racist I was, because of something I said during a lecture. So
What did you say during the lecture?
he talked about a court case, and it was about a guy who wanted to become a janitor at a high school. And he applied for the job, and they turned him down because he was a Muslim who didn't want to shake hands with women because of religious reasons. And they said, well, if you're going to be a janitor at the school, you're going to have to be able to welcome parents. And funnily enough, they weren't that woke. They said, usually, you know, there's a woman and a man.
Yeah.
And if you're going to shake hands with the father but not with the mother, that's going to make people uncomfortable, so we can't hire you. And the professor then asked us, you know, fresh students, new students, like, what do you think of that? And I thought that was totally legitimate, that they didn't hire this man, and, you know, that there were very, very valid cultural reasons to not hire someone who doesn't want to shake hands with women. Just, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't even think that I said that. I think I said more something, you know, like along the free market line of, oh, but he just didn't fit the job description, so it's fine that they don't hire this guy. You know, if you can't do what they're asking you to do, then that's it.
And every single one of your contemporaries disagree with you?
Every single one of them
How
disagreed.
can it be that way? I mean, there's definitely an argument to say if one of your jobs is to welcome people and introduce them and say, thank you, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Van der Beek. So,
Yeah.
hello, Donny Van der Beek and your missus. If they were to come in, it would be fairly legitimate to ask them to shake hands. So I can't believe that. I just don't understand why 99% of the rest of the people just didn't agree with you.
Right, because the freedom of choice in their eyes didn't trump his right as a minority to be, you know, just, I don't know, served the way that he wanted to be, even if it's about something like a job, you know, that doesn't matter apparently to them. And just that free market argument, even though that was the main argument I used then, that was not the one that I really cared about. You know, the one that I really cared about was, why on earth would you not want to shake hands with a woman? You know, that's the way we introduce ourselves. That's the way you recognize someone's presence. That's, you know, just common decency.
Is that all?
do
But
that.
I think that's all Muslims, is it? Is it? I mean, it must be a particularly sort of more orthodox, not orthodox. Well, I don't know what the Muslim equivalent is of the,
Sure.
you know, but the more sort of heavy practicing, perhaps.
Yeah.
So applying for the wrong job, and is that endemic and sort of reflective of what the Dutch education system is like?
Absolutely. I mean, this is just one example, and it's the one that stuck with me most because it was probably the second week that I was in uni. But I have countless of examples like this of all sorts of subjects and teachers that I faced during my education for well, I studied for 4 or 5 years. So I could give you an array of examples. But that's what kind of prompted it for me to think, oh, this is not normal that a teacher is basically calling me a racist for just giving what I thought was a very valid opinion. And I decided to speak out about that and told a journalist about it. He put it in the newspapers, and then it was just all hell broke loose.
Game over. So that's what made you notorious, and you've been referred to as the Shield Maiden of Whiteness, which is quite the gravestone for you one day. The Aryan Princess, and other such lovely things, which is really, really nice. So you jumped out of law and out of politics and into political commentary, and you've been the things that you've been incredibly brave about have been the dreaded vaccine stuff, and could you talk me through what's your opposition to why shouldn't we all get the jab?
Well, up until a couple of years ago, I think it would have been a completely acceptable argument to say that the state should have nothing to say about your bodily autonomy. They shouldn't decide for you what type of medicine or drug you should be taking, and especially not make your life dependent on it in the sense that you couldn't partake in society if you hadn't done that. That's a completely foreign idea for Western liberal democracy, or used to be, I should say, because now obviously it's the Chinification of the West that we've seen unfold in the past 2 years. So that shows you everything you need to know in my eyes. You know, it's like if you say something and the system just comes down on you that harshly by either removing your opinion from the internet, from the public market's square of ideas, or worse, what they've done during COVID, you know, during the lockdowns and during, well, still with travel, just saying like, you can't do this. You can't partake in society, even though the vaccine doesn't protect you against COVID nor protects you against transmitting it, so you can still get it. It makes no sense. Right now, we were talking about my fiance lives in America, and the U.S. still bans non-vaccinated non-citizens from going into the country. So somebody, but you don't have to get tested, but you do have to have the vaccine. So somebody who has the vaccine but has COVID can travel to the U.S., but somebody who doesn't have COVID and doesn't have the vaccine still can travel. And
the southern border is totally open, so you've got hundreds of thousands of migrants who aren't tested coming over the border anyway.
Yes.
So I couldn't fly there, but I could go walk over the Rio Grande.
And you have all these lunatic Democrat feminist women walking around streets screaming their lungs out of their body because of Roe v. Wade being overturned, saying, "Oh, the state should stay away from my body." But you know, that's the thing. It's the left doesn't care. You know, they don't care about being hypocrites. So I'm almost kind of past the point of.
It's almost a virtue to them that it's not hypocritical. It's I try and think of it in religious terms. It's like if someone thinks that they are right, that leftism is a god to them, then it doesn't matter whether it's inconsistent, irrational, illogical, evil in many ways, and totally discriminatory and harms the poorest and most vulnerable people in the world.
Yes.
Much more than anything else does, all in the name of virtue. It's crazy. So we were also talking about this, you know, when I sit down with an English journalist, it's a more mainstream English journalist, and have lunch, they will always say to me that this whole thing was down to incompetence. It wasn't, don't think that there's any sort of malevolent scheming about it. But I've always felt that there is an element of malevolent scheming about it. And I was asking you, and you made quite a good analogy about that. So is it incompetence or is it planned?
So personally, I would say definitely planned. I think we shouldn't underestimate our enemies. Actually, the fact that we underestimate our enemies is probably the reason why we're in this mess to begin with. So if you don't recognize the true power of the people you have in front of you, how are you going to beat them? That's one. But even then, if you don't want to go there, if you don't want to, for some reason, see the truth and say, no, there are some people, maybe not all, but some people who know exactly what they're doing here, then, okay, well, let's just take it, into the legal realm of things. If I kill you, and I had the plan to kill you, I had the intent to kill you, that's murder. If I kill you, even though I might not have, had a setup, but I still did things that would have obviously led to your death, and I knew that, then it's manslaughter. The mere reason that I might not have a journal at home where I write, I'm going to kill Laurence, does that mean that I'm not accountable for my actions? Does that mean that I cannot be held accountable for my actions? Of course not. Our legal system acknowledges that. You're still going to go to jail, and you're still going to go to jail for a long time.
And then if you continue to offend, doing the same things, which is what's happening now.
Yeah.
You of course you're accountable, and it also narrows the margins of the mitigating circumstances behind what you're going to get punished with. Do you think people will end up standing in front of courts for what's happened in the last 2 years?
I surely hope so.
Yeah.
I surely hope so. I think, there should be a precedent that says you can't just go and take people's constitutional rights away because you want to.
Where is the Dutch constitution on that? Do you have a written constitution in Holland?
We have a written constitution, but we don't have a constitutional court. So you can't actually go and take a law and say, or an executive order in this case, because obviously no one voted for these laws. It was all our government doing it by executive rule, which for some reason everyone totally thought was right. You can't go and take that to court and say to a judge, hey, this law or this order goes against the Constitution.
Yeah, because they've said the same thing in England. A friend of mine is one of the lawyers who does a lot of the child vaccine stuff, and he said if the government declare a pandemic, then next time they can just literally shove a needle in a one-day-old baby's arm if they want to.
Right.
So that's pretty dangerous precedent to set, and has completely reset the relationship between the citizen and the government. And there is a number of us who just cannot accept that. But how big is that number, do you think? Worryingly small if you go on your legal experience in that class.
Very. So if we were to take the vaccine as an example, which I think to a certain extent you can, I think, because it reflects something about how much you distrust the system, right?
Yeah.
And it also reflects how much you're willing to sacrifice for your beliefs, because obviously people lost a lot of things if they didn't take the vaccine. Some people lost their jobs, they lost the ability to travel or to see their...
Is that still the case?
Well, with the travel, in some cases, it still is.
Wow.
Now, obviously, less so, but the damage has been done. People were forced to or coerced at least, to get the vaccine. So I think if you take that example, in the Netherlands, 90% of the population got vaccinated. 90%. So then you have...
Boosted as well or not?
No, the boosted now, because I think you should be on your 4th. Now, after summer, you should get your 4th, I think. I'm not even keeping track anymore.
Yeah.
But I think, so the official numbers for the boosted are definitely lower, but the initial double vaccinated, fully vaccinated, 92%, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leaves less than 10% of the population that says no to this, for whatever reason. That's not a large number.
It's very strange that's the thing that I've found really hard about the last 2 years, is that it's shown, it's like you were saying, like once you see it you can't unsee it. So I now walk down the road, and if I see someone in a face mask, I know exactly what they think about almost every political topic there is.
Yes.
And that's really sad, because it's the same with this the other thing, calling you an Aryan princess, and saying that you're being used by the far right because you're beautiful and blonde and blue-eyed to like drag people over to that movement, is this hyper awareness of skin colour and immutability and stuff like that, which is and always has been, and I think to people who are dissidents and on the other side, never mattered. We don't care, but now it's almost like they've won, because we have to talk in all of these terms all the time. I was telling you about Brixton. You go and it's like, buy black from black businesses. If you stuck up a sign saying buy from white businesses, they'd be outraged.
Right.
So it's really patronising. and horrible, and that's why I'm dissident against it, because I think it's anti all of the best things that human beings can be when they strive to go.
Right, and it goes against, like, even from a legal perspective, again, the presumption of innocence. So in this society, not just saying a certain thing, but also not saying a certain thing can get you labeled as guilty, right? Because if something like white silence is violence is a perfect example of that. So not saying something makes you just as guilty or even more guilty in their eyes, you know, than as somebody who would say something that's racist.
Which is back to the Mean Girls line.
Well, but then reverse. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
obviously it's the same principle, but obviously they're not doing the good thing with this. So this is just, you can't win against these people, and I don't think that that's what they actually want. I don't think that they want a more tolerant society at all, because obviously it has the opposite effect. If I see Google telling me you should go and buy here, or my government telling me you should go and buy here because the owner is black, I'm like, you don't tell me where I buy.
Yeah.
I won't do that. Whereas if you would walk into a store and you would find out the owner is black, it wouldn't even cross your mind. You know, you wouldn't think of it twice.
Is that the point, to divide?
I think so.
It's just to divide.
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer, exactly. Divide and conquer everyone. Speaking of dividing and conquering, in no small part down to you, we are aware of the many, many tractors that line the roads and highways of Holland. Tell us about that for the Brits that don't know.
Right. So if you talk about intrusive governments, then this is probably what people should think of what could happen to them. So the Dutch government is now expropriating our farmers because of nitrogen emissions. So again, you know, what we've talked about before, they have a crisis. You could say a natural crisis or a made-up crisis. I think personally it's a made-up crisis.
Like most crises.
Like most. And then you say, okay, and you know, you citizen, you farmer, you whomever, apart from me, you're going to have to fix it by giving up your rights. Because, you know, when there's a crisis, that's the greater good, and you have to give up your individual right to do well for the greater good. So they're saying there's a nitrogen crisis, so it's all in the climate agenda, you know, we need to save the world, we need to save the nature, and the farmers need to go. Not the airlines, not, you know, the big capital, no, the Dutch farmers. Because their cows far too much. That's quite literally one of the reasons.
Right.
So they're saying you need to give up 50% of your land. That's basically what it comes down to. Depends a little bit of which region, but 50% of the cattle farm will need to be cut by 2030.
To be turned into what?
To lower these nitrogen emissions and to help, so to preserve the nature and to help the climate.
But surely that all that's going to do is make meat really expensive, make people's diets worse, and all of that sort of stuff. So that just feels very much like an agenda, which is that there's an ideological agenda that we're all going to have to sort of eat seeds and locusts.
Bugs, yeah.
And bugs. Well, you know, Gavin Newsom can go and dine at the French Laundry with his mask off and eat, you know, a prime ribeye.
Yeah.
It's why. What do the Dutch people think about this? Where are the voters?
So the latest poll, because the media is working extraordinarily hard to make it seem like there's no support for the farmers in the Netherlands, but the Netherlands is a farming country. We are the second largest exporter of agricultural products. Most of these farmers have had their businesses in their family for centuries on end. So this is not just like, oh, you started something and now we're going to rob you of it. No, this is your heritage, you know, that they're taking away from you. And I feel like a lot of ordinary people who aren't necessarily so political are like, this goes a little far, you know, because the vaccine and COVID and with people dying, that type of crisis was very noticeable for people. But a nitrogen crisis is a little more abstract, you know, even though they do a great job with fear-mongering the youth and telling everyone that in 20 years we're going to die because the ocean level is going to rise too much. But still, there are a lot of people saying, why are you coming after these people? That's a little strange.
Have you also noticed, actually, which is one of the other things I noticed, I was watching a music video of a band I liked on the weekend who wrote a song about 9/11. Now, 9/11 was a crisis, and everyone was calm. It was like, there's two planes and everything's on fire and buildings are falling down, and the people that were running it were calmly going about their jobs. So I've sort of come to the theory that the more people go about something, the less there is to worry about it.
Right.
And that's sort of indicative of the human condition. Anyway, that's sort of boring segue. But back to the farmers. So it's a sort of amorphous concept for the Dutch public to understand. They don't know whether they're, because everyone wants the planet to be a cleaner and better place, but we are making it a cleaner and better place with every new invention and all of this sort of stuff. So why the regressive thing? And is Mark Rutte, is that who's in charge? Mm-hmm. What's he like?
Oh, he's the worst. I mean, the guy officially is the leader of a somewhat liberal right-wing party. But this man, the only time you ever see him happy is when he screws over the Dutch people and he's having drinks with someone like Trudeau.
Yeah. Oh, God.
This man is he's the archetypical globalist, really. Somebody who never even speaks of the Dutch interests anymore, even though he's our prime minister. He doesn't care.
Because Europe is undertaking a huge, cultural shift anyway, with the mass movements of people from different parts of the world into Europe.
Right.
And in my understanding, from just what I witness in the world, is that Europeans are really, really accepting of people from different places. And yet, if you mention or even get even slightly not defensive, but you want to defend your own culture as well, you're then demonized and seen as what is that? Is that a guilt? Is that a guilt that is played out in the media? Is that a guilt that is played out in politics? It's a narrative. For me, it's just a constant, unending narrative. We talked about adverts at lunch, and you were saying if you turn on the Dutch TV, you would think that 70% of the Dutch population were mixed race.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same in England. If you turn on, I haven't watched British television in, I can't remember how many years now, but people tell me that every single family, is this correct, that every single family on British TV is like a black mum and a white dad, or a white mum and a black dad, or an Indian mum and a black. You never get a sort of.
Right.
What do you think is motivating that? Is it seems like it can't. I'm trying to think of the good stuff that these progressives do, because I want to talk afterwards about loving your enemies, because on the one level, where are the hypocrisies on our side of the argument? I keep trying to get this out, and I'll probably get it wrong, but in America, they have a Second Amendment, right? And they say it's not the gun that kills people, it's the person with the gun.
Right.
But at the same time, right-wing people will tend to be pro-life, whereas they go, I still can't make the fucking logic work. I can never do you know what I'm trying to say?
I thought you were going to the argument of saying, on the one hand, the Republicans who are in favor of the Second Amendment will say it's not the person, or it's not the gun, so it's not the means, it's the person who holds it.
Yeah.
Whereas and you said maybe what could be perceived as hypocritical is that the right wing, which is what we talked about at lunch, for example, will say, okay, there's a problem with young girls being groomed and harassed by a certain group of people in society, and they will say the characteristic here matters.
Yeah.
So the person who does it, we need to describe their...
Yeah, Dr. Phil.
Okay, yeah. Well, the thing is, I think that this it's not hypocritical because the comparison doesn't work because the left does it anyway. They'll do it too. They'll say, if the guy who shoots someone if you have a mass shooter in America, if it's a black guy, you won't know.
No.
If it's a white guy, you'll know.
Yeah.
So, you see, first of all, that's not true. And then second of all, why does the right wing make the distinction sometimes who the perpetrator is because they see it as relevant to the crime, or see it as relevant to the cultural tendencies that you're seeing there. With guns, skin color or culture doesn't really matter. None of that matters. But could you say, for example, culture matters when it comes to how you treat women? Of course. Absolutely. So it's not about, are we going to call out the characteristics of the perpetrator. It's about, does it matter to the particular problem, yes or no, and then be consistent in it.
Yeah, so that's where essentially there's a level of consistency in the arguments we want to have, and also they don't report the 6,000 dead black people in Chicago every year, or Baltimore and places like this, in babies being shot in prams. That's a non-issue. It's just about the conservative, what they call the alt-right conservative, or they call them Christian nationalists, don't they now, or something like that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think she called herself one, didn't she, the other day?
Yeah, but the reason they're doing this is very obvious to me. The reason why they're coming after me so harshly and why they're coming after you so harshly is because they want to tell people who look at us, who watch us, you can't agree with this, or this is what will happen to you.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And why will they do that? Because they don't want their narrative challenged. They don't want their policies challenged. So they're not going to report fairly about it, because these journalists are there to serve the people who are in power. That's just, again...
You can't unsee it.
You can't even... For me, there's just no denying that anymore. There's no denying it. So I think that's the reason why. You're going to report on the things that keep you in power, lie about the things that are not going to keep you in power, or at least omit the truth, and let the machine just run its course, do its work, like they've done with the vaccine, for example, telling everyone it would stop transmission, and they never corrected it. Simple example. Yeah. But this happens all the time with all these different subjects, and the common denominator is power.
Yeah, exactly, the same as it always is. Do you think, but also, if we're instructed to love our enemies, right, how do we do that?
So I think you can only love your enemy if you are very sure that he's not going to stab you again. If you're in front of a man who has a machete and who tries to strike you, and then says, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done this, and I'm not going to do it again. If you trust that is what's going to happen, then it's a beautiful thing to forgive. But if you are going to think, if you're naive about it, there's nothing beautiful about having your throat slit. No. Then you're just dumb. So you have to have a sense of reality. And I think that the people who are in power right now, you can't just say it's all incompetence. These people aren't dumb. No. They're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. They know that they're lying. So why would we give them the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, maybe they're just, Of course Joe Biden knows that it makes no sense that he has this travel mandate still in force, even though he just got COVID for the 4th time and is quadruple vaccinated. He knows. He's not an idiot. He's senile, but he's not an idiot.
Did you see the Kamala Harris thing where she sat down and she said, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm wearing a blue jacket?
Suit she was wearing and everything.
What's that all about?
It's...
Is it a marker? Is it like a Christian wearing a cross around their chest or a neck or a hijab? Is it the woke marker?
I think so.
It's like a structure and a ritual. What's going to happen with the Dutch farmers? Is it a similar situation in terms of the Canadian truckers, in the fact they have crowdfunders and stuff? Because obviously they're not on their fields. And it's not quite harvest time, but there must still be a lot of work to do on a farm, I imagine.
Yes, I think what the Dutch government is betting on right now is also the arrogance of these people. They're just on holiday right now. So the parliament recess, it's fine. Yeah. They're all just chilling wherever around the world, sitting on a beach, even though the entire country is basically on fire with this happening. The state coming in and saying, I'm going to take your private property away.
So are they taking it away? Do they get to keep the property, but they have to rewild it?
Of course. No. The farmers don't get to keep their land. They're being expropriated. So it shows the true motive of the government.
But surely the people can see that's just theft.
I think that's what's happening. But then you see how quickly the narrative shifts. So now it's okay, but how are these farmers allowed to protest? Because what they've been doing is they've been dumping hay on the streets, for example, now, and then what does the media do? They say farmers create dangerous situations on the road, might take lives. This might cause people to lose their lives because there would be car accidents, and they take a stock photo of a car that has been in a crash 2 years ago. And the guy whose car that was came out and said, "That's my car. That was 2 years ago. I had a car crash. That has nothing to do with the farmers." Mm-hmm. But that's, again, lying by omitting the truth.
Yeah.
You put a stock photo there. Is that completely illegal? No. Does it paint a picture that that's what the farmers caused? Yes.
Is it the same? Is a sin of omission as bad as a sin of commission?
Oh, that's where we come back to the Mean Girls quote again, and to the legal system. I guess not completely, but at a certain point, when it happens over and over and over again, I don't care if you do it or if you just watch.
So it feels to me like there's certainly with what we did last week with this man who got in trouble for the meme that I posted. We've got bored of reacting to situations. We think that the way forward now is to be proactive and to go after situations. Do you think that's the right way to go?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that more conservatives, or people who call themselves conservatives, should do that. You can just sit on your ass and think that this is going to be solved. You know, we can whine about how unfair the system is. You know, I did that in the beginning when they called me Aryan Princess and when they called me Shield Maiden of Whiteness. I was like, oh, it's just...
Maiden of White, so I just can't
it's funny, I know, but in the beginning I was 23 and I just got my political career started and I thought, oh, it's going to be over. How can these people do this to me? And you can stay in that mindset and, again, deny how terrible your enemies are. And think, oh, I have to argue with these people. I have to explain to them why I'm not a racist. I have to explain to them why I'm not an Aryan Princess or a Shield Maiden of Whiteness. No, you know. And these people are hyenas. The moment we talked about this, the moment you apologize to them, they're going to come after you and make sure that they kill you completely. It's over. So, you know, as long as conservatives are afraid of being called all these things, or they're just going to sit and complain and point at the system and say, oh, this doesn't function. No, of course it doesn't function, but do something about it. And that's what I think is so great about what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. So I still get so confused by this whole forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, and turn the other cheek and all of that sort of thing. But ultimately, I suppose, if someone is actively, if someone is trying to murder you, even if they're trying to murder your liberty, you know, your ability to move from one place to another or to live the life that you plan to live, then you are under attack and you have the right to defend yourself from them. And then actually try and restore some balance and some order. Do you think they'll be successful, the farmers?
I hope that that's what's going to happen. Because I do see that there are still a lot of people who are inclined to negotiate and compromise. And then I tell them, I'm like, but think about what the premise is here. You know, are you going to negotiate with a thief coming into your house? Like, oh, don't steal my camera, but if you just, you know, you can take this or you can take that, and then if you leave that, and then you can go to the media and you can say, oh, well, could have always been worse. He only took 30% of what I owned instead of 70. You know, like that type of mindset. I just can't wrap my mind around why so many people are like that. It's a matter of time. So if they continue this, I think at a certain point the government will have to make a concession. But I think they're betting on the public opinion shifting on the farmers. So the longer they sit back, do absolutely nothing, go on holiday, and have the farmers protest and have the media smear them, the more I think they're counting on the narrative changing and flipping over. And I really hope that that's not the case. But sadly, it is something that we've seen in our society, that it almost seems like the more injustice happens, the more people become numb to it instead of getting angry. It was the same with the terrorist attacks, you know, when the migrant wave hit in 2015. It was almost like people got tired of it. It's like, oh, we have another one. And instead of saying, whoa, what the hell, you know, you're being blown up in the streets by radical Islamists, we have to take action and close the borders and deport these people. Instead it was like, oh, just another one. Oh, it's terrible. Pray for Nice. Oh, pray for this. You know?
It's creeping, isn't it? It's just the slow strangulation of something, which is really, really sad.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, good will come out, because you look at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's gone full globalist ESG and is got
Yeah.
ridiculous inflation. America has got ridiculous inflation. All these policies are really hitting people in the pocket, and where people really care is their money.
Right.
Surely. So you just have to hope that the Dutch people will start. Are the Dutch, like if you had to describe them as a personality, as a national personality, so you say, for example, you say the British quite stoic. What would be a word to describe the Dutch?
So when you talk about the political landscape in the Netherlands, there's this word, it's called polderen. Polderen, and it really describes sort of the essence of Dutch politics, and it's just that's the process of creating land, you know. So you take some water away, you build some land. You take some water away, you build some. Compromising.
Right.
So the Dutch are very, very compromise oriented, but you don't negotiate with terrorists. So that's why I'm worried about, you know, what is happening here. But the farmers are, most of them are very resilient, and I hope that it sparks something in people because of how tactile this is to them. You know, it's your food. It's, can you eat? Do you have money to take care of your family? Their wars have been started over less than that. So if this is not it, then I don't know what will do it. I really don't know what will wake people up.
And it will carry on until, I mean, but the purely logistic stuff of harvest time is coming, what, September, October? As far as I can remember from my extensive farming knowledge, not. But who's going to take the crop, bring in the crops? Who's going to harvest the animals? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Are they in for the long run?
I hope that the farmers are in, that they have, you know, that they'll endure it, and they will see that for example, the foreign media, the right wing, international media stands behind them, and that they are supported, and that helps them just keep the fight up. Because, you know, again, in line with the Mean Girl quote, but also with the Bible, blessed are the peacemakers, but that doesn't mean that you just have to surrender. I don't think that that's what is meant by peacemakers.
Sometimes you make peace by having the fight too.
Yeah, if you're faced with evil, being peaceful in response to evil is going to result in you being conquered and crushed.
Yeah, and complicit in the evil.
And then the evil wins. So is that peacemaking? No.
No. It's really hard to get your head around. I suppose it's probably a lifetime's work, isn't it, to work out how to handle it. But I think it's really nice to know that we've started to proactively say, you know, enough of hacking children up for the sake of an ideology, enough of teaching people that skin colour is in some way indicative of your chances of succeeding, especially in the West, and enough of the idea of trying to enforce equal outcomes on people, because people have different skills and they're all individuals. Yeah, and
it clearly is just getting worse if you let this happen. That was so powerful about the video that you posted, and what happened with this guy who posted that meme that you posted, and then the police coming to your door for that. Like, that is, if that doesn't shoot shivers down your spine in a very bad way, then, you know, like, come on, you know, this is not a crime that you're committing. This is something you're saying, and you have some KGB officers coming to your door. Like, what are you talking about? Free West? What do you know?
It's this thing, and you said it at lunch, and I think it's kind of the most spooky, horrible thing is once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I've got that. It's over so many things now that I see, but ultimately it comes down to trust, and I don't trust human beings about anything.
No.
Really. Human beings need to be accountable to other human beings, you know, who polices the police, etc., which is what we were doing. We were saying, right, you're behaving unlawfully, you're answerable to us, and then the internet. And let the internet make up its mind, and it seems to have made up its mind that people were not very cool about that.
No.
Well, apparently we're on the same TV show this evening, so we'll see.
We were having lunch, and we're also going to be joining Mark Stein, who's a great fighter.
I love him so much.
He's amazing.
You're a ledge. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you.
Bye.